This is The Fabulist. I'm Joel Pilger, and I'm diving deep into the intersection of creativity and commerce with little more than my curiosity and a microphone. Along with my generous collaborators at Coop Studios, I'm traveling the world to gather all the insights that studio leaders need but are way too busy to grasp. I'm talking to the motion makers, the fable finders, the storytellers. If you're running a disruptive enterprise in motion or animation, live action, sound or music, experiential, I'm here to celebrate you for not merely participating in the industry, but for reinventing it. Because the future isn't just coming at us, it's being created. So let's get after it. This is interesting for me because having a conversation with four superstars in our industry is a really interesting challenge for me as a host, because usually I have a conversation with one person, maybe two. So you all can appreciate that we're going to have fun getting into this discussion today. I'm really curious to begin right off the bat with this idea of what the heck is a producer, because I think there's actually a lot of mystery still, because the word producer in film means one thing, right? In television, it means another thing. In other industries, it means something else. But in our industry, it has a specific meaning. Now, I'll pick on Rebecca first, because I think you can kick us off here. If you were going to answer the question, what is a producer, in a way that you could describe what you do for a living to your mom or your dad or a friend outside of the industry, how in the heck would you describe in a sentence what a producer does?
The easiest way to explain it is to say I'm a project manager. But as we all know, we're much more than project managers. I like to say that we are advocates and servants for our clients and our teams. We manage projects, but we also manage emotions. We manage schedules. We manage chaos and fire drills. And sometimes we can be therapists. Sometimes we're best friends with our teammates and our clients. We're coaches. We guide both sides to the end. And hopefully it's a happy experience. Would you agree, ladies?
Yeah, I'm going to pick on Kathryn next. So, Kathryn, do you have an operating definition of when someone says, what the heck is a producer?
Yeah, I love how Rebecca puts it, because you actually describe it in such a nice way. I always go back to, it's to create or to make something. That's what producing is, which kind of is that project manager meets these other skill sets that are really hard to develop and define. It's so many different job roles and so many different experiences that even for ourselves, I think that's why we create definition within every producer role, so we can try to understand our job roles and tasks and assignments of where they start and stop, so we don't step on the toes of other producers. So the line producer can work with the post producer, who can work with the executive producer and know what they're all doing.
So now we're getting into the subcategories of there's different types of producers. Oh man, this is getting complicated. So Jessica, let me ask you, do you have an operating definition that is different than what they've shared? How do you describe a producer?
See, I've been a big champion of changing the word producer, because there's so many different types. Like the producers that work in reality television do something completely different than, let's say, the producers that work in advertising, than the producers that work in film. So I've actually been a big advocate of actually changing the word producer and being more defined with the role, because there's producers that all they do is write. There's some producers that all they do is like interview talent. There's some producers that do like line producers, which are like logistics. So there's so many different roles under the producer like umbrella. I think we need to get more specific and define things in a little bit more succinct way.
Is there something that they all have in common? If I could challenge you to be like, is there something that all those various roles you described have in common?
Kathryn nailed it. It's just creating content in some shape or form, whether it's creating it from a logistical standpoint, like from a production standpoint, or creating it from a creative standpoint. That's basically what defines producer, or bringing the money, become like an investor producer. So I feel like they do have a tie-in. It's creating something, but depending on what aspect.
All right, Leyla, now it's your turn. Yeah. What's your operating definition?
My operating definition, I want to first off tip my hat to everyone on this call that has just defined it, because I truly agree with what you're all saying. My go-to definition of a producer, once we do get through the categories and subcategories of what a producer is, what they all hold in common, no matter if you're a TV producer, music producer, ad producer, is someone who is a critical thinker that is the one with trustworthy point of contact on a project that is the go-to person for everything. Whether it's managing budgets, managing clients, they are the person that's at the beginning of the project and they are go-to person at the end of the project that has all of the information and is leading and guiding the way.
Wow. Okay. You added a whole nother layer or dimension, I think, to this question of what is a producer. Because when I hear trustworthy, point of contact, someone who is there from beginning to end, and in a way, what I heard you say was knows everything, knows, right? Knows all the, how we started, how we got through it, how we finished it, like all the decisions. Am I describing that correctly?
Yes, you're describing it correctly. Absolutely. The producer is the one who has the forecast, who is temperature checking, who is creating these contingency plans should there be a safety net that needs to be where we need to protect the project and the clients itself. It's risk management. And if I am asked by my parents, which sometimes they still don't know what I do, or even by my family members, what they see me is mostly on my phone, right?
Yes.
And it's because I'm the master communicator with the critical thinking. So I tell my family, producers, we are that. We are highly organized, we're critical thinkers, and we have a forecast on what we are looking to project and plan ahead for the production, no matter what kind of producer you are. Those are the, I want to say, the fundamentals of being a producer. And any level, you got to have that.
I love what you've added there, Leyla, because now you're making me almost remember my days when I was a studio principal and I didn't really have producers on my team. And I thought I can get the work done. And when I finally started working with producers, which I think we've defined here to best we can, oh my gosh, what a difference it made. Like, I'm a creative and I suck as a producer. So when I started working with people like you with those talents, I just could not have been more thrilled to be like, oh my gosh, there's people that do that. And it made my business so much stronger. It made the work better. Now, here's my next question though. Because as a creative person and a studio principal, our work is better. The work's getting done. We're working for better clients and the clients are happy and we're making more money, all these things. But let's be honest, the creatives get all the credit, all the glory, because when people look at these companies, studios or production companies, agencies, and they look at all this great work, they go, man, look at all those creative people over there. And I have this theory. I call producers the unsung heroes of our industry. I'm curious. I'll start with you, Leyla, because you're clapping. No one can see that. But true, not true, agree, disagree. Are producers the unsung heroes of our industry?
Yes. And someone may fight me on this, and I'm okay with it. Why I say that is because, yes, producers are the unsung heroes, and producers, we're the executors. It's one thing to think about it. It's one thing to have an idea. It's one thing to talk about it, to conceptualize. It's another thing to craft what you are thinking in your head and go with it and actually do it. That is difficult to do. And when a producer steps in, we're the ones that are making the idea happen. How do we make it happen? Who do we organize and orchestrate to be on the team? And who is going to be the right director? And also, two, producers are creative by trade, because we also have to think about who's the casting on this team, right? So we are definitely the unsung heroes that make it happen. We are the doers.
Does that idea of casting resonate with you? Because I hear this idea of, oh, a producer builds a team and says, oh, we're going to bring in this animator, but this editor, but this line producer, whatever these various resources are to execute, as you were saying, Leyla. Who here resonates with that idea of casting? Kathryn, your hand's up.
I've been head of production for 5 years now. And so majority of my time is spent working with producers and production team to dive in when we have the creative to figure out how do we execute this creative? What are the parameters to the project? And who do we need to fill? And every project's different. And what Leyla's saying is right. It's a very creative process. I think as a producer, the hardest part is that it just takes time to get to know enough people to be more hands-on. So it does take more people to support and help create teams, especially for younger producers who maybe don't know as many people. They don't know how they're going to do it, but it's getting them excited about the idea of coming up with who do we need to find? What are the types of skills? How do we investigate? And how do we, I love the word cast. I always thought team building, but I actually think that I like the idea of that everyone has a role that we're casting for. And then we're like, oh, this person could fill these things. So I actually think I might start using that.
Yeah. What's your take on this, Rebecca? Because I know for many years, like when you and I first started working together, one of the superpowers that you brought with your expertise was this very deep bench of talent. You had a Rolodex for people that remember that term, right? So this whole idea of casting, I think, is probably near and dear to your heart.
Oh, absolutely. I also love the word casting. I always thought it was just like resource management and hiring the team. But it is, and I agree, Kathryn, it is a very creative process. I've worked on teams where, as Leyla was saying, we're the doers, we're the ones who make it happen. But there is an extension. We can look at creative and say, okay, we need these types of people. But even further than that, what we need to do in casting, we need to make sure that we understand people's capabilities and if they have the right look, the right style. So we're so much more than just project managers, taskmasters. We need to have our hands in every aspect of a project and understand all the needs. And when it comes to casting, we need, yes, it ultimately might be the director's decision on who that cast ultimately is, but we need to be presenting the right people. We can't expect the directors and the rest of the creative team to come up with those people. And as Kathryn said, it does take time. This is almost a full-time job in itself. A lot of the larger studios have people who do only this. And you have to have that eye. You need to know who you're working with. And also, just my last thought on casting, it's not just a role that you're looking for or a style. It's also a temperament. You need to make sure those people fit in with the team. It is a really interesting skill set to be able to put together a cast for your projects.
Well, something I'll maybe amplify on. I'm curious if this idea jives with anyone here. When I think of a project manager, I almost think of someone who is managing resources, but there's very clear boundaries, and they're mostly an internal manager, right? Like they have a team, they're managing a project, go get it done. As soon as I say, oh, I want that person to interface with someone externally, meaning a client, and all that communication from the client, which could be multiple people, multiple stakeholders, is all going to flow through this single point of contact, I think is the phrase that Leyla mentioned. And then that information is going to be disseminated intelligently and shrewdly to the team getting the work done. All of a sudden you're like, oh, that's not a project manager. That's something else, because now there's this conduit through which everything is flowing. Jessica, do you have a thought about that, or has that been your experience?
I guess I'm going to agree with the team here in terms of producers. I think the only thing I would add to this discussion would be getting more into client management as well, because that's another big component of being a producer, because not only are we casting our entire team, we also have to think of the client's goals and what their commitment is and what they are looking to achieve. So making sure the people that we cast also match with the deliverables and what we're trying to ultimately get on air. So I think that's something I would definitely have as super important to what our goals are, is to make sure that the client is happy and we're hitting our deadlines and hitting our goals and we're hitting our deliverables list.
That sounds really complicated, because I think of all of those, the people on the client side and all those temperaments and all of their hopes and wishes and goals and objectives and whatnot for the project. And then you have all the internal people, right? And then you have freelancers, and then you probably have a boss, right? Like you have somebody who might run the production company, or you might be a partner in the production company and you answer to your other partners. It sounds like there's just a lot of moving parts to this job. And maybe this is partly why I marvel, because as somebody who's a self-professed crappy producer, I so appreciate what all you ladies do. So let me do this. Let me reset the room, if you will, and give you each an opportunity to say hi, to introduce yourself, and do us the favor of telling us like where are you currently working, but also give us maybe a few bullet points of your recent history of where you've been in the industry. I'll try and keep it to a few sentences so that we stay on time. But Leyla, can I start with you? Please say hello.
Hi, my name is Leyla T. Rosario. I'm the executive producer and managing partner at the Gig Media. And my track record of producing combines advertising and on the vendor side as well, line producing. In addition, I'm a director. And this year has welcomed some fun awards with Cannes Lion Silver and Clio in the One Show for a project that I produced. And I would like to now pass it on to Jessica, my partner in crime.
Thanks, Leyla. Yes, my name is Jessica L. Ransom. I'm executive producer and managing partner of the Gig Media. My background actually is in reality television. That's why I brought that up a little earlier. I've also worked in documentaries. I've worked in post-production. And then I'm now working doing a lot of stuff also at a commercial space in the agency side. And I've worked in the vendor side as well. Like Leyla, I won a bronze Clio for some work I did with PetSmart, producing that. I've worked on some big shows like Teen Mom, 16 and Pregnant. I've done some HGB shows, worked on some crime shows. Additionally, I have done some documentary work, like I said before. So, but 20 years of experience, but all over as a producer. And right now I've been focusing on the Gig Media. And the Gig Media is a production company, and we produce branded content, short films, long form. You have it, commercials. Leyla and I are doing that right now. So that's basically a little bit of my background.
Super impressive. When I hear long form and short form, then I marvel even more because those are such different beasts. All right, Jessica, do you want to pick our next victim to introduce themselves?
I'm going to roll it over to Kathryn.
Thank you, Jess. So my name is Kathryn Henderson. I'm head of production and an executive producer at Versus, a production company based in New York, but we work everywhere. For the last 5 years or so, I've been a head of production, was at a previous studio, now here at Versus for the last 2. I've also been an executive producer for over a decade. And my beginning of my career, I was actually a line producer. And also indie producer. So I was doing short films, feature films, simultaneously to working in the advertising industry. So I was a producer in an in-house agency. Then I went and became a 3D producer, VFX producer, cell, animation, and all of that. And then found myself into this role, but getting a little taste of everything.
Rebecca, that brings us to you.
I am Rebecca Olson. I'm a freelance executive producer and also the co-founder of Deducers, a producer training program for motion design and post-production producers currently. My career has been in motion design and post, VFX, a lot of 3D animation. I've been mostly freelance throughout my career, 20 plus years of that. Before 2019, I was the managing director of a studio here in Denver, Colorado, and then decided to start consulting and went freelance again, and then started Deducers with my co-founder, Dr. Casey Warren. And we offer custom workshops, courses, boot camps, and individual coaching for producers and creatives. And currently, as I mentioned, in motion design and post, but our goal is to expand into agency, television, film, documentary, reality, all of that.
Very nice. And Rebecca, you're the one person here who I was going to say either had the pleasure or misfortune of working with me when I was running my studio. So
it was a pleasure.
Yeah. When I talk about working with producers, you're one of those people. Like you just were such an incredible asset at my studio. So let me shift the conversation. And thank you for each introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about your history and your expertise. Because I heard a lot of different producer titles in there. And I almost wish we had time to go through all of them, but that would be almost a podcast unto itself. Where I want to take the conversation now is I sense a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and you're each like bright-eyed and leaning forward. It makes me want to ask, and I'll start with you, Leyla, what is it that you love about being a producer?
Oh, that's such a hard question. Why do I love being a producer? I love the collaborative experiences that I've had over the years being a producer. And also too, what I love about being a producer is truly being at the beginning and middle and end of a project and then letting it fly, letting it go out into the world so that way the world can experience something that the team and I have crafted and thought through with the clients as well to have everyone else experience that. That's just one of the many things that I love. I can honestly go on and daydream about why I love being a producer so much. And the most recent thing that I was thinking about when I was asking myself this question too is like, why do I still love doing it? Right. After so many years. Why I was thinking about this is because a few months ago, I was in LA, I was on shoot, and there was a young creative director that came by and he stepped out to just get some fresh air or whatever. And I'm on my phone and he said to me, he said, have you been doing this for a long time? And I said, yes, I've been doing this for over 20 years. He said, no way. There's no way. You don't even look like you could be doing this for more than 20 years. You look so much younger. And he said, why are you still here? I know so many people that have gotten burnt out or have changed careers or have decided to move on from the industry. And I just said, I truly love making an idea come to life. I love that creative process. And when I have faith in something, and what I mean by having faith is I have faith that this is going to happen and I want to see it through, is that belief, right? Because the idea has to also convince me. The idea also has to keep me excited in wanting to work the very long hours that we all know we're going to endure to make that idea. If I'm inspired by that, then yes, it's going to keep me wanting to go more and more. And that's what keeps me going as a producer is the inspiration behind the ideas that I've experienced throughout my years of production and being inspired by my peers. I know so many talented people, and that's why I love producing.
Wow. Kathryn, I'm thinking about you when Leyla was describing some of the, like, what it takes to get the job done. And when I think of Versus and the pace and the level, right? I know a lot of people there, and I've worked with the leadership team there over the years. And it made me think, I want to ask Kathryn, how do you keep going? Like, you must love it, because otherwise it seems like it would just tear you apart.
Yeah. I used to say, Leyla, your passion for producing, I was like, I'm inspired. I'm ready. I'm ready to produce.
Yeah.
I'm in. But it's a funny question, actually. I think about this a lot. The reason why, especially when you're working in a job like mine, I can feel a little bit like serving, hotcakes at a breakfast buffet. But what Leyla said and alluded to is that there's something always different about every project. And when you can pull it off, it feels really good to know that your contribution meant something and it mattered. And I think that's meaningful work. For me, it's how do I see myself represented in a project, even if I'm not the day-to-day producer? And also, as a personal thing, I like puzzles. I definitely like putting things together. I liked math when I was younger. I liked the formulas and trying to figure things out, how to solve for X. So I think that there's a lot of that in producing, because I guess producing reminds me of music in a way. There's a lot of different ways you can explore, and there's a lot of different ways to do music every day. You're going to be practicing one day, you might be performing another, but it's still something music. So I think producing is similar. So it's the variety. It's the seeing the small things and being happy about those. And I love the people. I do have to say that. It's definitely a people thing. Where else would I rather be?
I'm noticing each of you ladies nodding at this notion of being invested in the work, believing in the work. I think, was that the term you used, Leyla? Like, believing in this is a worthwhile undertaking. We're going to produce something that has some meaning, has some significance, and we can all later point at it and say, there it is. There's that thing. So now I'm curious. We talked about for a moment why the four of you love being a producer. Let's talk about the dark side, because I'm curious, how do you manage the challenges? And I'm going to go to one straight away, because producers make plans and they anticipate and they make contingency plans, and those are all wonderful. And then what? Clients change minds, scope creep, right? Bad weather, any number of things go wrong, right? Maybe your creative director gets COVID and you are subjected to all of these changing variables coming at you. And let me pick maybe one of the least favorite ones, right? It's maybe the picky client who says, I don't know, I don't like it, I'll know it when I see it, or something like that. How do you deal with that as a producer? Are there any overall strategies that you employ to manage the challenging and ugly side of things? Rebecca, I'll start with you, and then I'd love to hear Jessica's take on this.
There's definitely a dark side for sure. And every single project is going to have a hiccup of some sort. But I like to over communicate, and I reiterate all the time where we are in the process. As I mentioned earlier, we are advocates for the client. And Jessica, you said this, like we've always got to keep the client's goals in mind. And we have to be flexible. So when a client wants to delay a schedule or they don't know what they want until they see it, we need to find clever ways that work within the budget to give the client options so that we can keep things moving forward on schedule. Obviously, that depends on the type of project, deadlines, so many different factors, but that's our role. As Kathryn was saying, every project for me is like a problem to solve. And knowing that there's going to be hiccups, I'm always looking, okay, this next posting that we provide, the client could say A, B, or C. What are we going to do after that? And so hopefully I have some kind of plan and we're not getting some feedback from completely left field. But I think it's our job to always find solutions. And as long as we're communicating and making sure they know what it takes to do the job, we're doing our job and we're protecting both the client and the team and getting to the end.
So Jessica, something that Rebecca said right there triggered a thought that over the years, I've increasingly found myself saying to people, I find that good producers plan and great producers anticipate. And I'm just curious, how do you react to that? And is that part of what you do to manage all the craziness and changes and variables that, right, you can't really plan for?
I just want to go back and actually answer the question why I got into production because I want to bring this up. Again, I will definitely answer your question. I got into producing because it was just in my blood. At 3 years old, I walked around with a box over my head saying I want to be in production. I was obsessed with creating. I was obsessed with making content. Since I'm little, I've only worked in production my entire career. It has been a love of mine. I'm obsessed with TV. I watch all TV. I read TV. I write TV. I live and breathe this industry. So for me, it was like in my blood. Like I couldn't do anything else. And in terms of making yourself a great producer, circling back to this topic, I think what it is for me, it's about great relationships. And then establishing the great relationships, so not only anticipating, but then I was like, okay, this just happened. Who can I rely on? Who can I call up? Who can help me here? Because I've had some times where I'm in a jam where client you just talked about before, completely switches the deadline. And because I established a good rapport and a good connection with these people, and they would rely on that sometimes to help me through the tough times and to anticipate that. And also give them a heads up because you all alive as producers, we already know when things are going to hit the fan. It's rare that we don't know what's happening and what's going on. And that's why I love this industry because it is always changing. Even the most simple projects. Some projects I'm like, oh God, it's going to be so easy. And those are the ones that literally are become the biggest mess. That's the ones I'm like, oh, come. And then I'm like, okay, I see where this is going. The train is about to fall off the tracks. So what are we going to do? It's very rare that we're surprised by anything that happens. And when we do, it's because we establish those relationships. And that's why I love producing. It's always changing. It's always going. It's always something new. It's an exciting field to be in. And if you're into that kind of like adrenaline rush, this is a job for you.
I'll say something you said about giving the client a heads up. I think it was the phrase that you used back there, which is that way of communicating and leaning into that relationship to give everyone visibility of, I see what's coming and I'm not ahead of it. I see potential problem or easier way or efficiency or something like that. I'm curious if when you think about producers in our industry, right, all shapes and sizes, but also different experience levels, is there a way that you would describe to maybe a young producer or someone who fancies becoming a producer, What's like the difference between a young producer and a seasoned veteran? Because I'm guessing each of you works with producers that are new to the industry, right? They're new to the position, new to the role. Does anyone have maybe Leyla, you have a point of view on what
Yes.
separates the experienced ones from the green ones?
Yes. What separates the experienced ones from the green ones is mileage. Mileage. It is the mileage and the journey. How far and how many miles have you put into this?
So it's not like secrets, it's not hacks, it's not like these little techniques. It's just time in the trenches doing the work.
Yes, it is time in the trenches doing the work, and it is about the time that you put into it. So I mentor a lot of young producers, and I love their energy and I love their enthusiasm, and I love how they want to get to be at a specific place in their life and their goals. And we discuss mileage a lot. And I say, it's about mileage. It's about the journey. It is about gaining these experiences along your way to be able to then honestly use some of those experiences to say, okay, I've been in this situation before. I can actually lean into those experiences and that mileage that I keep talking about to be able to craft something that perhaps can be even better planned than maybe beforehand. And I'm not sure who said it here. The point about we've seen it all, when that's the part of the mileage that I also see. It's like when you get to a point that you've been doing this for so many years, that's what separates a green producer and an experienced producer, because you have seen it all. You've seen injuries on set. You've worked in extreme weather conditions. You've had no shows. Let's say the insurance did not go through. All of a sudden, this is turning into a union shoot. Now you got to change your non-union crew into a union crew. Let's say, for example, the clients forgot to tell you they had a family vacation, most recently in my experience. And now that's just going to push your entire shoot completely by a whole month. So how can a green producer prepare for those things if you haven't lived it? And you got to live it enough to then use that experience and what I call mileage to base your best guess and your best planning and your best forecast for it.
Kathryn, I see you nodding a bunch. Do you want to chime in?
It's interesting to hear it put as mileage. Again, another Leylaism. I'm going to take that as well. But it really is that. And I think then along the way, recognizing the tools gained, the skill set gained along the way. How do you anticipate if you don't know what might not come because you haven't lived the experience of someone being a no-show? And I feel like a big part of what I consider producing also learning how to crisis manage. But crisis management only happens when you go through crisis. So that's that mileage journey. Crisis happens, and how you react to it the first time is different than the second time. It's different than the 10th time, and it's different than the 100th time. So we constantly change as we go through our path. And that's really it. It's mileage.
Here's a classic scenario that I've encountered many times as I've worked in studios and worked with producers, is often the young producer, and by young, I just mean young in their career, will create a plan. Oh, here's the time, and I have everyone resourced, and I have everything figured out. And then the client threw away the schedule a long time ago. They're like, I don't know, I want to change this and change that. And the producer gets upset and says, but I had a plan. And the analogy I often use is it's a little bit more like golf. It's like playing golf where, our goal was to hit this ball and it go right on the green and roll in the little hole. But the reality is, what? The wind changed and it landed in the sand trap. Now what? And it's constantly asking, now what? And how can we anticipate? Can we now chip it onto that green and roll it into the little hole? What if it goes off into the water? Let's think that through, because that could totally happen, even though, quote, that's not the plan. So, Rebecca, what's your experience? Because you do a lot of training of young versus mid versus senior versus executive. Do you see any common patterns that differentiates the more junior versus the more senior?
Yeah, I would totally agree with the mileage factor. It just simply comes down to experience and crisis management. That's basically what we do. We're trying to avert any crises. But especially in motion design and post, I feel like with the more junior producers, they don't necessarily have an understanding of workflows and what it really takes to get a job done. And even in production, there's things that you have to keep an eye out. Like you need to make sure you have insurance or you're working with union or non-union, all of these different aspects of what it takes to get jobs done that are unknown. And you can't just hand over a booklet and say, this is how it works. You can give guidelines, but every single project is different. So it's constant working on many projects, learning how to respond to a crisis or a change and how you communicate that to your team and respond to your client. That's another thing. You can't just, I had a plan and you threw out my schedule. So no, never say no, unfortunately. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me. It's just like any job, you need the experience. You've got to constantly hone your craft. And that comes with mileage. I love that. Everyone's going to use that.
Yeah, Jessica, I see your hand going up. What's on your mind?
I'll give a personal experience because I recently started doing some agency producing and I was a vendor side girl. So I had to switch careers, go to agency side and learn my agency side producing. And vendor side, you're more harsh. You can literally tell a client, no, we're not doing that. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't happening. You can be more matter of fact. You can be more direct because you have that vendor side power. When I had to switch and go agency, it's okay. They're like, no, you can't just tell the client no. You can't just be that direct. You gotta learn the art. And she just talked about, Rebecca just talked about how to speak to the client in a different way. So even though I'm a seasoned producer, I've worked in many industries, but the gig and media, we've done so many different types of projects. Going in as an agency producer and doing that type of work was like, oh, wait, I had to learn a skill set. Even as a seasoned producer, this is like a new skill set that I had to learn about. And also the structure of how things go. Because there's like vendor side producing, there's really no checks and balances. If I want to go out and buy t-shirts for helping for props or whatever it needs to happen, I can do that. You know what I mean? I just expense it from the card done. Agencies, no, you have to talk to BA and BA needs to talk to that. You know what I mean? There's all of these different steps that I then had to learn as a new, working on the agency side. So it's very interesting switching those gears because even though you're a seasoned producer, each job is so different and specific. You have to learn a new skill set. So I would say like adding to that is like learning the structure. But if you're a good producer, you can pick it up. It's just like a switch of like dialogue and okay, I got to be nice. I said it's not how it is. Like stuff like that is something where you will pick up one. If you're a good producer and you're a seasoned producer, even if you switch careers, let's say, or you switch sides, like you go from reality to scripted, I feel like there's a lot of crossover and tie-in and just learning the new lingo, I guess I would say.
That's such an interesting perspective hearing you talk about going from the vendor side, right, to being a producer with the agency. And I've heard many stories of the reverse, right? Someone that was agency side going to work at an independent production company. But yeah, you've given me like a whole nother thing to think about of, oh yeah, what would it be like to be inside that ecosystem where the incentives and the goals and right, how you manage those clients, it's very different. So I really appreciate you sharing that perspective. I saw faces and nodding and people saying, oh wow, that is really interesting going on here. So let me ask this question because obviously I work with a lot of studio and production company founders and principals. And some of these, shall we say, are a bit like me. I'll make myself the bad person in this story. And that is, I didn't know what I didn't know. And then fast forward to after hiring my first senior producer, Julie, if you're out there, thank you, you're amazing. It was such a game changer. My question is, what is your advice to someone who is hearing this conversation and saying, man, I got to get me one of those, like people that forecast and make contingency plans and trustworthy point of contact, mileage, and they're hearing all this and they're saying, man, that sounds awesome. I got to get me one of those. What's your advice? Let's see, Kathryn, maybe I'll start with you. What would be your advice to a founder or a principal, right? Who's considering this, oh yeah, we need to level up our production game, meaning our production department and hire a really legit producer?
Yeah, I appreciate you starting with a really easy question to answer. Thank you. No, I guess I would say it's at that point if you don't know what you don't know. So I would suggest that person write down all the things that they're hoping that the producer could be taught their processes and protocols of how they do things, what they're really looking for. There's a lot of different things. Do they want the producer to be client facing, or do they still want to manage the client relationships and they really want them to be in-house? What types of projects are they doing? It's live action to post-production, 2D animation versus stop motion animation. These are different people. So I would define the task. And I know it's like work, but like really put it down. Like just really write down, what are these tasks that I'm doing that I don't want to be doing? What are the skill sets that I need them to be doing? And ideally, what would communication look like? Would I be sending, things out, or do I want this person to be empowered? And that'll help you understand what level of experience you're looking for. And then also just determining how much you're looking to pay as well, because that'll also tell you right now, do you have reasonable expectations of apparently this unicorn who's going to be a client-facing person, but you want to maybe pay at a rate that's maybe out of college. So I think it's just defining the needs.
It's interesting because I think I heard you imply or maybe just say it, that as a producer moves from junior to mid to senior, they're more and more client-facing. Is that an accurate statement?
Absolutely. I think at that point, your skill set, the ability to me, I guess I feel like this. If you're going to be client facing, you're able to represent things clearly for somebody else to understand. So that's where we're at in the process. Have conversations that might be difficult. You might be having a scope conversation, but how can you make that an easy conversation to be had? And those are typically people who have seen things many times and have more mileage.
More mileage. That's Leyla's word. Leyla, do you have any advice? Pretend I'm that production company principal who's saying, man, it's time for us to level up and hire a great producer. What would be your advice to someone who's doing that hiring process for the first time?
Yes, my advice for anyone that's looking to level up their team and expand their business, right?
Yeah.
Is to network within your network and ask for references. If you work in the industry already and have a network of trusted contacts that you can ask, I would first start by asking within your network, hey, do you know anyone that fits this criteria? And see what is recommended to you based on your needs. To Kathryn's point, I love the list. I am a big list person. I have lists here in my journal. I have a task list on my phone. I love a great list. So I love that point that Kathryn made about putting together on paper and really defining what are your expectations for this person. And then tap in within your network. And if you have a budget, I would also tap into a headhunter or a recruiter that can help you find that unicorn producer in the industry that will join your team.
Jessica, did I see your hand going up? You have a thought on that?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off it and say, I think another big thing is relationships. I keep hammering this home because it's super important. You need to decide what you bring a producer on, like, where are you going with your company and what relationships can they bring to it? So if you want to go more post-oriented, so you would look for a producer that's stronger post-production that can bring in some of those post-clients. I feel like that's really big as well. Where do you want your company to go? Where do you see it? What kind of work do you want to bring in? Because producers will bring in their contacts. Like part of the mileage is they have a list of contacts and they're going to bring that to the table. Like, oh, I know a great editor. Oh, I know this company that's really looking for a lot of this type of work. So the big thing is relationships. And so you need to, okay, do we want to do more animation jobs? Do we want to do more production jobs? That find a producer that tailors to where you see your company in 5 to 10 years. That's the person you bring on.
Well, you're reminding me, Rebecca, we did a roundtable a couple of months ago making the point that producers are often the best salesperson, even though they're not salespeople. But because of those relationships that Jessica's talking about, they tend to be like the go-to resource for that client who is like, oh my gosh, Rebecca, it was so great working with you and the team. This has been such an awesome experience. And you get to say, great, when are we doing it again? So anyways, I know you were going to answer the question on your own, but I just thought I would interject that.
No, that is true. This is the thing. It's like you mentioned it earlier. Some of these studio owners may not know what they don't know. And I would expand upon everything that these ladies just said and say, even before you start writing down the list of what your needs are, talk to an experienced producer and find out what can a producer do for me? I love what Jessica was saying is like, first, you need to know what your goals are of your company for sure. But what can a producer come into this company and take over for me? My experience when I was the managing director of the studio, I ended up taking almost everything from the owner. And it depends on the type of producer you want to bring in. So I think again, it's like maybe interview and find out more about the role before you even start looking for someone.
Yeah, I think you're making that interesting point of we don't know what we don't know. For a lot of owners, I'm guessing when they hear this, they think, wait, producers are going to take over jobs? That seems terrifying, but I can say from experience, that's actually beautiful. Kathryn, I'm going to run this by you. In a studio like Versus, where there's so many jobs and projects and things happening at all times, clearly producers have enormous, not just responsibility, but authority to just make decisions and go and get the job done. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to trustworthiness, right? Like someone that you trust, and that's really it. It's the frequency and the amount of jobs that we have going on at one time. Like I just have to innately trust. And in the end of the day, we have communication pipelines and protocols so that way I can see if there's something that might require a conversation or a check-in or, oh, might need to put more attention into that. But I think that's the strength of producers right there, is that they are able to literally take on, after an EP scopes a job and has all these conversations, and then you brief in a producer and you're like, okay, these were the conversations for how we got here. This is how many rounds of review we have, blah, blah, blah. Do you have any other questions? Okay, project it out. And let me know if you need anything. And then they make the relationships, they change the schedules, and they know when they have to go back to the EP because they're like, this might be something for you. But tremendous autonomy is the goal for any producer. I think that's why I myself too like to have the job, because otherwise it wouldn't be that fun if you had to ask, is it okay if I send this out?
Yeah. Kathryn, I know this is very specific, but maybe this will help someone out there listening understand what we're really talking about. When you talk about like the number of jobs and the frequency and the pace, can you give us an example? What's the most number of jobs you've been like actively producing, running yourself as a producer? Can you think back because some people are probably thinking, oh yeah, they probably produce 3 or 4 jobs all at once. And you're probably going to tell us it's way more than that.
It depends on what stages they're in. In the end of the day, there might be some that are, and it also depends on the complexity of the projects. And I used to run like a smaller studio. I had a cell animation company, a business partner, and we probably would have 10 active projects plus like 4 or 5 bidding, maybe more at a time. And it was just the 2 of us running everything. But the point of that though is you still have like your trusted creative directors or people running and managing a lot of these projects and keeping it going. So I don't think it's as much about how many jobs you're doing. It's how complex, how time intense, how many people are on those projects in general. Like I couldn't produce jobs right now because there's just so many going on that I'm overseeing them in a different capacity.
Right.
And that's my job,
So that's part of that head of production, right? That you have producers under you that are managing and running any number of jobs themselves, but you're keeping the whole machine going.
Yeah, it's essentially, if I had to be bogged down in the day-to-day, then I can't keep my eye on everything that's coming in or successful handoffs or coverage plans. I know everyone loves to talk about an out-of-office coverage plan, but that's a lot of my life.
Understood. I'm going to try and bring it to a bit of a conclusion here because we're approaching the hour point. I could go on for many hours because I do love this subject. This question I have here, I'm going to try and keep this a little bit brief. What about the studio or production company and the producer there that says, I want to level up my game. I want to just become better and faster and stronger. Like I know it's about mileage, but is there anything I can do to move ahead, learn, grow faster? Would you maybe have any advice for someone or for just a producer out there that is a freelancer or I don't know, someone who's just saying, I want to get better. I want to learn. I want to grow. Let me ask you, what would your advice be to your peers, those producers out there who want to level up?
Yes, my advice to peers that want to level up is to keep a pulse on trends that are going on in the production industry. And what I mean by that, and I tend to tell this to anyone that's asking me, I get hit up on LinkedIn a lot. Sometimes I get people in my DMs, hey, can I talk to you about things? And I ask them, what are you looking to grow? Where are you looking to grow? Are you looking to learn about live action? Are you looking to perhaps learn a bit more about the benefits of AI? Because I think that there's a whole area of the industry of AI that is scaring anyone. It's not scaring me. I ask people to identify where are they looking to necessarily grow. If they're looking for more of a general growth where they want to gain more production experience on set and perhaps understanding the post process, then my advice to them is to reach out to people, even if they don't know them, do a cold call or maybe not a cold call, do a cold email and reach out to them and say, listen, hey, how are you? And introduce yourself. Also say your expectations and say where you're at in your experience. And I say that because you'd be amazed how many producers that are out there that were once that person that wish that they either had someone to give them some advice, or they may even be available to say, hey, you know what, would you like to shadow me? Would you like to shadow me on a project? Would you like to come with me into this production, or I can use additional support? It doesn't hurt to ask, because if you do not ask, no one is going to know, no one is going to read your mind. So definitely express your professional intentions of what you're looking to do and where you're looking to grow. And then keep a pulse on the trends, because what I tend to do, and this is the advice that I love to give to anyone, again, who's asking, is I keep a pulse on trends with directors. Right now, we see there's a certain kind of trend with directors where everything's psychological thriller. It's everywhere, right? Including in commercials, psychological thriller. And I love it. One person, because I love psychological thrillers. So keep active in the industry to see where the trends are going. And that can also open your mind to where your interests are to be as a producer, whether it is going into, like I said, live action, AI, et cetera, or doing post-production producing as well. Or you may want to be more client on the client side. Reach into your network, contact people on LinkedIn, also review portfolios. It's one thing to network. If you don't know how to speak about the work, and if you don't have at least your top 10 directors in your mind of who you can talk about and talk about their work, I'd start there. I start understanding rosters, reaching out to reps. Reps are also wonderful connectors in the industry that also think that they're unsung. And I have learned so much from reps that I have known for over a decade in this industry. So definitely look into reps. And how do you find reps? Networking events. Go online and see what film festivals are out there. See what panel discussions you can join. Meetup groups as well. There's so many different types of meetup groups, whether it's through social media or even just in person. I would start with those things to see how you can level up your producing experience.
Oh, that's all beautiful. I was noticing Jessica nodding a lot as you were going through there. So I wanted to check in with you and see what's your advice to that producer that wants to level up and grow.
She said exactly what I'm going to say. Like personal story as well. I think it helps that I've worked across so many industries. So if you want to say level as a producer, because I've worked in post-production. So when I get like a bid and I'm like, oh no, you're not charging me this amount of money. We need to go back and look at this again. That's how you become a better producer, is understanding everyone's role and how they fit in it. And that's how you can not get got. Let's just be real. You can be like, oh, this is actually the timeline for this. And this will how it work this way. We can position these editorial dates, such. So I feel like understanding everyone's level, like Leyla said, educating yourself on what all the players do makes you a good producer. Also, leveling up your relationships, like you said before, mentorship. Like I still do classes and mentorship. I still am like, hey, you're a new producer. Let's talk. Let's get to know each other. Because there's still part of the industry that I don't understand and I'm still learning. So I feel like growing your education, always the key. Leveling up your network. I also got any industry event there is, go to it, enjoy it, embrace it, talk to everyone you can. And this is basically the key is understanding all parts of the industry and what everyone's role and everyone's goal is, because everyone has a goal. And they're not going to tell you their goal, but once you've been in their position to understand their goal, then you know how to make everyone happy. And then you know how to move the pieces accordingly to make things happen. And that is the key of a producer, is making everyone happy and also making sure everyone achieves their goal, what they're trying to come out of it. So I feel like that's the makes you the best producer in the game right there.
I heard both of you ladies say what I'm going to sum up with is in real life, right? Because what I'm hearing is things happen faster when it's real, when it's in person, when I'm actually in the moment, in the event with that person. I'm connecting that person and we're having this conversation. It's all very fast and very dynamic. And Rebecca, you've been doing some events, right? Which I think as maybe an extension of Deducers, but you just bring producers together and you have hangouts, right? And is this part of the way that you're helping everyone learn and grow in addition to what you're doing at Deducers?
Yes, selfishly, there's so many creative meetups and industry meetups, but I feel like producers don't get together, just us, and talk about the woes of being a producer and celebrate our successes and all of that. As part of Deducers, we started doing meetups. We've done it in Boulder, Denver, recently in LA. We plan to be in Toronto actually in October. We want to do New York. We just want to start this. This is just a get together where everyone comes. It's nothing formal. But yeah, it's so that we can all network and all just learn from one another. This is one of the reasons why we started Deducers. And obviously I'm biased. So if you want to level up, hey, give me a call. But obviously it's about learning from one another and learning the processes. And I would even extend it to sit with an editor. Ask them why they're doing this, that, and the other. Sit with an animator, which is like watching paint dry on a wall, but it's still very interesting. Learn why they're doing the things that they do. It's all going to make you a better producer.
Man, I love that so much. All right, so maybe let me ask this final question. I'll put it to you, Kathryn. Bring us home. Is this a good time in the industry to be a producer, right? Are you excited about the future? And being a producer in terms of where the industry is going? Are there opportunities? Do you look forward to what you're going to be doing next year?
I am actually optimistic about it. I think like anything, there's changes. Technology keeps changing. So it will change how we produce. It'll change how we work together. But the thing that I've seen time over time is that producers are communicators. And there's a statistic out there that 80% of workforce conflicts are miscommunication. So while we still have that, while we still cannot communicate with each other, producers will absolutely be relevant and necessary and needed.
Leyla is snapping and high-fiving as she said that. Do you want to weigh in with a final thought on that as well?
I'm the cheerleader right now. I'm over here on mute, just like cheering you on. That is absolutely perfect. I have nothing to say other than you nailed it. Oh, wait, I lied. I was thinking about this as you were talking and sharing that powerful answer, Kathryn. The art of negotiating and how to negotiate. And that is a skill in itself. I feel there needs to be more classes on it. There needs to be more courses and seminars and podcasts and group discussions about the strategic, psychological, and thinking of how to negotiate and when to negotiate. And that also ties into your communication style as a producer and knowing how to negotiate and keep those relationships with your vendors. So I'll leave it on that. It is a tricky thing and it takes time to find your voice in that. And when I was a baby producer, I didn't have my voice. I was still trying to find who I was as a producer, as I'm also producing and learning and making those mistakes along the way. And now I found my voice in how to negotiate with things. So I think the art of negotiating and how to get to a point of agreement, even if it's something that is in a disagreement when you are working on a contract or a scope of work, is how to negotiate. And that is, I want to say, in the top 10 powerful things as a producer that you need to have in your toolkit.
Yeah. Jessica, I see you have a thought. Jump in here.
I'm going to be the Debbie Downer of the group. I feel like producing today is vastly changing. Content creators are coming up fast behind our heels. As producers, we're going to have to learn how to navigate that new space. And that's something where now people are producing, writing, shooting, and editing content. And that is taking over a lot of even like traditional advertising, especially if you're looking in the commercial medium. So I feel like as producers, our role is shifting where they're requiring us to now edit, shoot, produce, and do all these other like Jane of all trades. So as something as producers, I feel if you're trying to come up in producing, that is something that you need to consider because a lot of these new producer roles, if you're on like LinkedIn or Indeed, they're asking us to be all of those type of jobs. Mm-hmm. So that's something where, it's just as an old school producer, the old school producer will always still be here, I think so. But the content creators are coming fast and they're coming in quick. So that's something where we need to consider and think about. And as old school producers, learn how to navigate that new space and work in tandem with them.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that perspective. Yeah, there's challenges ahead for sure, but I do appreciate, I think each of you has an optimism as well of opportunity and growth. And I'm just so thankful. I'm thankful that producers exist. I'm thankful that you were willing to show up and share your perspective and your wisdom with everyone here listening. So thank you to each one of you. And please keep up the great work on behalf of our industry. You are the unsung heroes, but maybe not quite as unsung today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. And thanks to my collaborators at Coop Studios. To learn more about them, visit coopstudios.com. As for you, if you're focused on running a strong and thriving creative company, consider joining Forum, my private network of the world's leading studios. For details, go to joelpilger.com.